Good afternoon and welcome to the National Press Club. My name is Monroe Carmen. I'm president of the club and editor-at-large at Bloomberg Business News. I'd like to welcome club guests in the audience, as well as those of you who are watching on the C-SPAN network and listening on National Public Radio and the Global Internet Computer Network. Before introducing our head table guests, I would like to remind our members of upcoming speakers. On Wednesday, February 9th, Senator Bill Bradley, Democrat from New Jersey, will present a speech entitled American Civil Society and Renewing Citizenship and Community. On Tuesday, February 14th, Henry Cisneros, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, will discuss the reorganization of his department. And on Wednesday, February 15th, Heather Whitestone, Miss America of 1995, will review her year so far as the first deaf Miss America. She will discuss the 75th anniversary of the Miss America pageant and announce a major new public service initiative to promote early detection of deafness, in a speech entitled, There She Is, Today's Miss America. Audio and video tapes of press club luncheons are available through the club library or by calling 1-800-500-9911. If you have any questions, please write them on the cards on your tables and pass them up to me. I will ask as many as time permits. I'd now like to introduce our head table guests and ask them to stand briefly when their names are called. From your right, Jeffrey Katz, Congressional Quarterly. Carol Jusitis, Chicago Tribune. Ellen Perlman, Governing Magazine. Patrick Jaspers of the Milwaukee Journal. Wendy Koch, Gannett News Service and Secretary of the National Press Club. Mark Johnson, Media General News Service and Chairman of the club's Speakers Committee. Jeff Barker of the Arizona Republic and member of the National Press Club Speakers Committee who arranged today's luncheon. Bill Salisbury, St. Paul Pioneer Press. Clarence Zenz, in his 16th year editing the National Press Club Record. Jennifer Dixon, Associated Press. And Charles Benson of WITI-TV in Milwaukee. I'd like to thank staff members Melissa Bender, Pat Nelson, Melanie Abdo-Dermott, and Jeff Tarbell for organizing today's luncheon. Our speaker today comes from a state whose leaders have a penchant for making waves. From Robert La Follette and his progressive movement to Joseph McCarthy and his pursuit of communists in government. Into that tradition steps Republican Governor Tommy Thompson, who has made headlines by advancing ideas that many Republicans in Congress now hope to enact into law. Thompson has cut the income and capital gains taxes and repealed the inheritance tax, in his state. He has made ample use of Wisconsin's line-item veto, which empowers the state's chief executive to trim the cost of programs. And Thompson shares another important trait with his Republican allies in Congress. After long toiling as a member of the minority in Madison, he now finds himself the state's dominant political figure. Thompson, a former Army captain, began his political career when he was elected to the State Assembly at the age of 24. He later served as minority leader. He was elected governor in 1986 and again in 1990 and again in 1994. But it has been, welfare reform that has brought Governor Thompson the national attention. He has received so much attention, he is now mentioned on many lists of possible GOP candidates for national office in 1996. His reform initiatives are grounded in the principle of giving states flexibility to wean the poor from welfare dependency. His initiatives have included Learn Fair, which ties parents' welfare checks to their kids' school attendance, and Bride Fair, designed to remove the disincentives in the welfare system that discourage recipients from marrying and finding work. But that is only the beginning. Thompson has been working closely with Republicans in Congress on welfare reform. The GOP proposals would consolidate some 300 programs into block grants to the states. Among the programs likely to be affected are food stamps, aid to families with dependent children, and Head Start. A preview of the congressional debate was offered at the National Governors Association's recent conference. After listening to the Republican proposals, Democratic Governor Howard Dean of Vermont said the Republicans want to do no less than, quote, starve children and kick old people out of their houses, unquote. With that objective appraisal, I would present to you Governor Tommy Thompson of Wisconsin.
Thank you, Monroe. Thank you so very much, Monroe. I just have to make a couple of corrections. It's La Follette, not La Follette. And it is Howard Dean did vote for that resolution after he made those disparaging remarks. It was amended, but he did vote for it. I have a great feeling of admiration for Monroe Cammon, your president, because I had a chance to talk to him a little bit before. He tells me that he came in as treasurer of this tremendous organization, and it was on the verge of some degree of financial embarrassment. Bankruptcy is the word. And he used the item veto many times in order to straighten it out, so I feel that I'm in very good company, considering I've used the item veto 1,500 times in Wisconsin and have never been overridden. And Mark Johnson, I appreciate very much. I had a little bit of trepidation after I had a chance to meet with Mark. He told me he was a reporter, and he says, some of my best friends are Republicans. So, you know, Jeff, I appreciate you inviting me. And Clarence Zenz, who grew up in Racine, Wisconsin, and West Racine, and Wisconsin, and now is a retired reporter, I believe, from the Washington Star. But I want to thank all of you for being here. You know, it's really an honor for me as a governor of the great state of Wisconsin to be asked to come out here and have a chance to talk to you about some ideas from the Midwest and some of my philosophy. Very nice that you had the weather from Wisconsin to welcome me here today, and it's great. It's great, you know, coming to Washington D.C. this time of the year as a Republican. You know, congressmen are actually nice to see me. I go up to Capitol Hill, they say, hi, Tommy, how are you doing? They smile and shake my hand. They really want to hear what I have to say. And that's just the Democrats. You know, it's and after 8 years of working away as a governor, it's nice to be able to come to Washington, D.C. and actually be able, you know, to really shoot live ammunition in the form of good ideas. Ideas, you know, that are working in states all across this country. And you know something nice, I haven't had to kiss anybody's ring for months in order to get an office appointment in Washington and be able to talk to people about their direction and what's happening. What a difference the election makes. You know the numbers. 67 new Republican members of Congress. No Republican incumbent, House, Senate, or governor lost on November 8th. Republicans picked up 11 governorships for a net total of 30. It's been since 1972 that the Republican governors have controlled the NGA, the National Governors Organization. We now represent 72% of the American public, including 8 of the 9 largest states. Republicans won new majorities in 18 state legislative bodies. winning a total of 469 Democratic legislative seats. 15 Republican governors now have GOP majorities in both houses, including the state of Wisconsin. There is no question, ladies and gentlemen, that there was a political revolution on November 8th. The question is, what does it really mean? The voters on November 8th had one very simple message: return power to people. The press has covered this message in the post-election period and have called it the new federalism, giving people more control over their government, returning power to the states and local governments, returning power so it is closer to people. But this is only part of the message of 1994. Voters were not simply saying replace one big federal government with 50 larger state governments. Voters said we want more power. We want more control. We want to be able to control our own lives, our own destiny. They said we don't want government to be responsible for everything. The most profound and long-lasting message of the 1994 elections, and one that hasn't been fully covered by the press, is this: more responsibility away from government and back to the citizens, which, if you think about it, is exactly what it's supposed to be. That's what our forefathers wrote the Constitution about. My father was a county board supervisor back in Elroy, Wisconsin. Elroy is so small that you call somebody, get a wrong number, and you still talk for a half an hour. But he had more common sense than just about anybody I've ever met. And when I was first elected to the legislature, he told me, "Son, Tommy, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion, and you'll get along just fine." When I was elected governor of Wisconsin 8 years ago, this is what the people of Wisconsin were telling me. They said, "We're tired of an economy that is heading south in more ways than one." I listened. We made changes. We cut taxes. We cut government bureaucracy, government rules and regulations. We encouraged business, and we've created 500,000 jobs since then. When I was elected, the voters said we're tired of supporting a welfare system that is obviously not working. I listened. We made changes. We laid down the simple premise that if you accept a check from the state, then you accept certain basic responsibilities in return. Our welfare rolls are now at their lowest level in 15 years in Wisconsin. We've been hearing a lot now about the 10th Amendment lately. It's been used as proof of the argument for the new federalism, and rightly so. In fact, Senator Bob Dole carries around the 10th Amendment in his coat pocket. He showed it Monday evening, and he said he knows it's accurate because Strom Thurmond was there and told him it was. But if you read the 10th Amendment closely, it's about more than just delegating power to the states. It is about delegating power to people. It says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are reserved to the states respectfully, or to the people. This should be the fundamental principle behind the debate taking place today. The welfare debate, the education debate, even the mandates debate. It's not about merely changing the site of government. It is about changing the nature of government. It is about putting power in the hands of the people, trusting citizens, trusting parents, trusting individuals. The current welfare debate is a perfect example of this. It is focused almost entirely on block grants and switching responsibility from the federal government to the states. Now, I wholeheartedly support putting the states in charge of welfare reform. I think Wisconsin is a prime example and has proven beyond a doubt that we know better than Washington what will work, and that one size does not fit all. But welfare reform is about more than creating 50 different welfare programs. It is about overhauling a system that erodes initiatives and weakens families. It is about changing the responsibilities between welfare recipients and government. It is about, really, ladies and gentlemen, about putting power in the hands of individuals who have been considered powerless far too long. I saw a piece in the newspaper yesterday. Gloria Steineman and a group of people are challenging those of us trying to change the welfare system. They're saying welfare reform is singling out and discriminating against women and children. They really have it backwards. It is the current system that discriminates against women and children, traps them into a life without hope, without a chance, without an opportunity, and without a future. That, ladies and gentlemen, is discrimination of the worst kind. Handing out money and expecting absolutely nothing in return is not public assistance. It is public apathy. Here's your check. See you next month. The current welfare system has failed because there is a misappropriation of responsibilities. Government has virtually all the responsibilities, and welfare recipients have virtually none. That's why the contract with America, and what Representative Clay Shaw is going to announce tomorrow, insists on some new standards for welfare in America. Standards like a work requirement and time-limited benefits. I agree. There are 4 fundamental principles that I believe should be part of any national welfare reform proposal. First, time-limited benefits. To break the culture of dependency, we need to establish up front that welfare is temporary assistance. From day one, welfare recipients should be expected to work toward the goal of self-sufficiency and to do it within 2 years. Second, only work should pay. Idleness should not be rewarded. The premise should be that everyone in our society is capable of doing something. And work is essential to self-sufficiency. Everyone who is able should be required to work immediately in exchange for cash benefits. Third, reduce illegitimacy. Welfare payments should not be increased for additional children while you're on welfare. Why shouldn't we expect welfare recipients to act responsible? In the real world, families do not receive a pay raise for additional children. It should be the same on welfare. And fourth, we have a national scandal on our hand with our child support. Child support in this country is at an all-time low. Only 18% of the child support that is due is being collected. In Wisconsin, we collect about 35%. But there are $34 billion of uncollected child support across this country. And is it right for an individual, and usually a male, to bring a child into this world, walk away from that responsibility, lock a woman and that child into a generational welfare dependency, cross the line into another state, and just merely go on his way and not be held accountable? To me, that's a national scandal. There should be a standard that we use the IRS code, and that every state has to support and be involved in the Uniform Support Act and start collecting back support payments. Beyond those 4 essential guidelines, states like Wisconsin should have the flexibility to design and manage programs that work best for their citizens. The federal government should establish goals, but not dictate the process that states must follow to reach those goals. But I submit that we at the state level know what works much better in welfare reform. One size does not fit all. I know what works in Wisconsin. I'm sure other governors know what fits and works in their states. We know if we expect more of welfare recipients, we change behavior and we change the welfare system. Without certain standards that are rooted in shifting responsibility from government to citizens, any new welfare reform is just as likely to replace one form of dependency for another. And that, to me, is the problem with a lot of the welfare bills today. This conviction is based on my experience with welfare reform in Wisconsin for the past 8 years. I started 8 years ago when welfare reform was not even a common thing in any of the states. And what have we been able to accomplish in 8 years? Since 1987, we have reduced Wisconsin's welfare rolls by 25%, more than the rest of the nation combined. Only 2 other states reduced their welfare rolls during that period, and Wisconsin's reduction was more than twice theirs combined. We reduced our rolls by 25%, while nationally, welfare rolls went up by 35%. Wisconsin's national ranking in percentage of households on welfare fell from the 8th highest in 1987 to 31st in 1993. In the same time period, Milwaukee County was one of only 3 of the nation's 35 largest counties to reduce its welfare caseload. And when I first came in, the first month that I was governor, we sent out checks totaling $46 million each and every month to welfare recipients. This past month, it is down to about $30 million. That's a net savings, ladies and gentlemen, of $16 million each and every month. And can you imagine if the other 49 states were able to do that? Newt Gingrich and Senator Dole could balance that budget and could be able to do it by the year 2002. Why did this happen? A strong economy, some people say. Yes, a strong economy helps, but it doesn't explain the success. Other states with lower unemployment rates than Wisconsin did not experience our welfare caseload declines. Princeton University professor Lawrence Mead concludes that Wisconsin's welfare reform has succeeded because we tied the benefits to work, individual responsibility. In a study released last week, Professor Mead wrote that effective work programs appear to be a main reason why Wisconsin has been able to cut welfare dependency in recent years. He concludes that Wisconsin's enforcement approach helps move people into self-sufficiencies. Others might look at our Learn Fair program, our Children First program, or other reforms we've initiated. But invariably, the debate becomes bogged down in partisan interpretation of the numbers saying that this or that program worked or didn't work. What is clear, however, is this. We changed welfare in Wisconsin because we demanded individual responsibility from welfare recipients. And since my first day as governor, I made it clear that we would expect more of welfare recipients, moving from a system in which government had all the responsibility to a system of concomitant responsibilities. Here's a recent example of how shifting responsibility from government to citizens has already been a key to successful welfare reform in Wisconsin. When we recently announced that we were going to be the first state to set up time-limited welfare reform programs, we had to pick a couple counties. We had to get permission from the federal government, and they only allowed us to go in 2 counties. The welfare rolls in the affected counties before we started the program dropped 9%. We hadn't even started the program. We just announced that it would start. Clearly, people respond to higher expectations. We've also learned that the welfare bureaucracy changes when expectations are raised. In Wisconsin, we have county welfare offices competing, and social workers. A whole mind change has happened in Wisconsin. They compete amongst themselves over who can reduce welfare rolls the most, who can help more people get off of welfare and get into a life of independence, a life of a job, a life of being a positive, constructive citizen. We dramatically changed the whole welfare reform environment in Wisconsin. We actually allowed something really radical. We actually allowed people to be in charge of their own lives. As a result, Wisconsin is now poised to eliminate welfare completely. By the year 1997, AFDC and general relief will no longer exist in the state of Wisconsin. In fact, we have changed, in this upcoming budget, we're going to change our social services department to one of a jobs department. In many respects, the issue of welfare reform has been largely decided. The American people have told us what they want during the last presidential election, and they're still waiting for it. And I think you're going to see it this year. And let's face it, the welfare system is broken. It can't be fixed. It has to be replaced. I believe education reform is then the next issue of major national debate, an important issue for the next election. And this debate, like the welfare debate, will center on the same issue of moving responsibility from government to people. Like welfare, our education system is failing because government has taken the responsibility. It's taken away from the consumers, the customers of education, the parents. Government responsibility has replaced parental responsibility. The current education system trusts government more than it trusts parents. To me, a K-12 education system controlled by a government monopoly is just as flawed as a welfare system in which government has all the responsibilities. Reallocating this responsibility is really going to be the key to education reform in Wisconsin and across this nation. In 6 days, I'm going to be submitting my budget to the state legislature. In that budget, I'm calling for the expansion of our Milwaukee School Choice Program, the first program of its kind in the nation. We plan to expand this program to include all private schools, including religious schools. I'm not naive. I know that this is going to lead to a great deal of debate in Wisconsin on this issue, the separation of church and state. And it's also going to generate debate in this nation, as well as in the near future. And why not try it in the District of Columbia? Why not allow choice to work in the District of Columbia, where you pay more per student than any other place in the country? And are you satisfied with the results? And should the President of the United States be the only one to be able to pick a private school? Why shouldn't a poor African-American family in the District of Columbia be able to pick a school of their choice? My position is very simple. Public schools are schools that serve the public. They do not necessarily have to be government-run schools. They have to be schools serving the public. School choice is part of this new public education. School choice is more than a program. It is a philosophy. It is a belief that, that parents really know best when it comes to their own children. It is a belief that poor parents have the same right to choose that other parents do. It is the belief that parents will choose the best school for their child. That's education serving the public. Expanding the choice program means that if a mother in Milwaukee, a poor African-American mother in the 6th and North, wants her child to walk to the private school across the street instead of being bused to a public school across town, she's going to have that choice. She's going to be able to make up her own mind for herself and her daughter and her son. And if that private school across the street has a religious affiliation, she's still going to have the choice. Religious values, ladies and gentlemen, are not the problem. Dropout rates and test scores are. Government is allowed to pay for whatever preschool that a parent chooses to send their child. Religious, non-sectarian, public, they can choose. Is allowed to pitch in for whatever college they choose, the GI Bill of Rights. When people came back from the Second World War, we were able to choose either a public or private college. And we have some of the best colleges in America. It's only when we deal with kindergarten through 12 that we assume in our society that the bureaucrats know best and parents have no say. Not anymore. And private school choice is only part of the solution. In Wisconsin, we're going to make public school choice an option statewide, so that public schools are an excellent choice for parents as well. Charter schools. Any school in the state will have the freedom and the flexibility to educate our children as they know best. Private contracting. If a school thinks a private firm can turn their school around, why don't we allow them to do it? If they think a particular principal or group of teachers are the answer, I say hire them. Let them do the job. Failing schools. We're going to give superintendents, radical idea. We're going to give superintendents the freedom to close schools that are not doing the job. If a school is not performing, shut it down. Stop throwing the money away. Stop paying for failure. It's not going to be easy. It's going to mean challenging the status quo. It's going to mean fighting the gravity pull of those who are so afraid to change. But we're going to do it in Wisconsin. We're going to put education back where it belongs, back in the hands of our parents, our teachers, and our students. The issue of shifting power from government to citizens, I believe, is going to play the defining role in the upcoming presidential race. And I think we have an unprecedented crop of Republican governors across this country with hands-on experience in shifting responsibility from government to individuals. governors with solid experience in what actually works. Actually works. I think that argues for a Republican governor on the ticket. But I'm not here as a candidate for president or vice president. I'm here as governor of the state of Wisconsin. It means that I'm going to submit a budget next week that I'm passionately behind. It's going to cut our property taxes in our state by $1 billion. $1 billion alone. And we're going to cut the property taxes by $1 billion without raising income taxes or sales taxes. We're going to do it by cutting spending and redefining the role and the responsibilities of state government. That's what excites me. That's what I care most about. It's cutting taxes, expanding educational choice, changing welfare, enacting reforms that move responsibility from government to citizens. It really means a government of ideas. In Wisconsin, we've been taking government out of people's lives, and they're prospering for it. We've been able to cut state taxes by hundreds of millions of dollars. Radical ideas like reducing the income taxes and the sales taxes, capital gains taxes, inheritance taxes. And our state revenues, what happened? They're growing by $400 to $500 million a year. We removed government roadblocks to the private sector, and our economy has grown into one of the nation's strongest. We've created more manufacturing jobs than any other state in the nation. Number 3 as far as construction jobs in the past 8 years. And at the same time, our environmental record remains one of the nation's best. It shows you can accomplish both. Giving responsibility to individuals really does work, ladies and gentlemen. It's working in Wisconsin, and it will work for America. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Thompson. Thank you so much. And now comes the hard part, the questions.
The fun part.
You mentioned Newt Gingrich in your speech. Do you agree with the Speaker that orphanages deserve a prominent place in any welfare reform program?
I disagree with the whole concept of having one size fits all. I think orphanage might work in some states, but I want the discretion in Wisconsin to expand adoptions and foster care. I believe a much better approach for welfare reform in Wisconsin is to allow parents, individuals, and collectively parents to be able to adopt children. That's where I would like to have the flexibility of putting the extra money. I don't want to put it in orphanages. That's not going to work in Wisconsin, but foster parents and adoptions and expanded care for children is where welfare reform will work the best in Wisconsin. But orphanages might work well in other states. So other states should have that flexibility. But give me the flexibility to develop what I know is going to be better for Wisconsin. That's why the one-size-fits-all that's going to come out of Washington, whether it be from the Democrats or the Republicans, doesn't work. And I don't want to substitute a failed Democratic policy on welfare socialism for a Republican policy on welfare restrictions. Give me and give the other Democrats and Republican governors alike across this nation the opportunity to set up 50 laboratories of welfare reform, and I can assure you that Newt Gingrich will be happy, the American people will be happy, and the people on welfare will be happy, because we're doing what everybody wants, and that's replacing a failed system for one that will work.
Thank you. As you said in your remarks, there are fewer people on welfare today in Wisconsin than in many years. Now, can you tell us, do you really know what happened to these people? Do you know how many sought more generous benefits in other states? Or how many found jobs? Or how many went off the welfare rolls temporarily only to return? Democrats in your state claim that childhood poverty has increased in Wisconsin since 1989.
Well, I know that Mrs. Smith is working down the corner at the butcher shop. John Jones is working at the XYC Corporation. I can't tell you exactly what everybody is doing, but I can tell you this much, that most of the people are working. We have the most expansive jobs work program just about in any state in this country. And we were one of the first because we had been involved in welfare reform before any of the other states. And we have been able to show that most of the people in our jobs program are moving from welfare dependency into an independent and having a job. And the average pay is $6 an hour, above the minimum. So we have been able to reduce the welfare caseload. And I would have to say that the only state in the Midwest that pays higher welfare benefits is Minnesota. So they don't leave Wisconsin to go to Illinois, where we pay 50% higher than the state of Illinois. So you can see that our welfare reform is actually working. As far as childhood poverty, this was one report, but actually since 1988, our childhood poverty has improved considerably. We are one of the Mothers magazine says we're one of the best, one of the top 5 states for daycare and for taking care of children. Our welfare poverty is declining, and our children in poverty is declining, and it will continue to decline as long as we're able to maintain our economy, maintain welfare reform, maintain the opportunity to be able to transfer people from a life and generational welfare dependence into one of independence.
Questioner wants to know whether Wisconsin really is a model for welfare reform. You have unusually low unemployment rates that other states do not enjoy.
That is true, and that was one of the things that we started when we first came in, because our economy was in terrible shape. You know, we had signs on the border. They used to say, when the taxes get too high in Wisconsin, please, you know, go to the state of Illinois. And then we had one big sign that said, when the last company leaves Wisconsin, please turn out the lights. True story. And that was in 1986. We've been able to change the economy around. We've cut taxes, we've reformed welfare, improved our educational system, and we've been able now to attract 500,000 new jobs. We have more people working in Wisconsin than at any time before in the history of our state. And our unemployment truly is down around 4.5%. But there are 13 other states that have lower unemployment than Wisconsin. And their welfare rates went up over 30%. Wisconsin's went down by 25%. So it's not only the economy, it is also the welfare reform initiatives that we've tried. And I have a state senator with me today, Senator Margaret Farrell, who's been a leader in this, and she can also attest that the welfare reform initiatives actually do work and are accomplishing what they set out to do, and that's emancipating people, giving them hope and optimism. People on welfare, you know, contrary to what a lot of people say, people on welfare want to work. They want to be trained. They want to have an opportunity, and that's what we're giving them in Wisconsin.
If states are given more latitude in their approach to welfare reform, does that raise the risk that states will compete to provide the lowest possible benefits?
Oh, such arrogance. You know, I hear this all the time. We can't trust the states. We can't trust governors and state legislators. Only we in Congress are smart enough and decent enough to protect poor people. Hogwash. Why do we have the welfare mess? We have the welfare mess because Congress has not changed the system since 1935 when Franklin Delano Roosevelt started it. And the welfare reform, the AFDC was set up in 1935 to do one thing, to provide for a subsistence wage for a mother with children until she remarried. That was the basis for the welfare system. And it truly hasn't changed. Here are some of the things in the welfare law that we have today. One, you can work for 99 hours and still get AFDC. But if you work 100 hours, you're kicked off. Now, does that make any sense to anybody? That's the federal law. If you get a job and work, the first thing they do is they take away your medical assistance. And what is a poor mother with children that's trying to work and make it if she's not going to have a medical assistance card? In Wisconsin, we give them an extra 24 months. We had to get a waiver. We had to come and kiss somebody's ring to get it. But we got it. We were able to set it up. The welfare system does not allow, and really discriminates against minorities, does not allow a young man to marry his girlfriend if she's pregnant and able to get AFDC. But if the girl doesn't marry the young man, she can get AFDC. Does that make any sense at all? And who's trying to change it? It certainly hasn't been Congress. It's been the states. And so that arrogance of attitude that only we in Washington, D.C. know what is best for poor people, to me is not the answer. Give governors and give state legislators the opportunity, and we will show you that we can develop a much better system to help people help themselves, get them off of welfare.
Recognizing that getting welfare beneficiaries off the rolls and into the workforce is a goal that most people agree upon. A questioner asked whether it's true that most people on public assistance are elderly, disabled, or children.
Depends upon what program you're talking about. In AFDC, that's not correct. In Medicaid, it probably is. You got to tell me what program you're talking about in order to really be able to candidly answer the question. You have different programs for the elderly, you have different programs for the disabled, different programs for AFDC. AFDC is usually with mothers and minor children, and that's usually a younger age. And it's the program that really is broken. AFDC is the program that is so broken that all the tinkering that you want to do is not ever going to really fix it. You have to scrap it. You have to replace it. You talk to a welfare mother, they tell you the system doesn't work. You talk to a Democrat or a Republican, either in the state legislature or Congress, they'll tell you it doesn't work. You talk to a taxpayer, they'll tell you it doesn't work. And yet we want to somehow keep the system alive. Why don't we admit it? It's broken. Let's do something different. That's what I want to do. I want to be able to give a young mother with a child an opportunity to make a better way. I want to give you a story. I received a letter from a young mother after I started LearnFair. LearnFair is a program that says that if you're a student below the age of 18, you have to go to school in order to get your welfare check. My liberal friends, you know, criticize me, and the reporters criticize me all the time, say, you can't do that. What if Johnny and Susie doesn't want to go to school in the morning? And I thought to myself, if I was growing up and I walked down to my father or mother in the morning for breakfast, I'm just going to drop out of school this semester. My father or mother would have said, don't let the door hit you as you're flying through it. It's called tough love. If you're going to receive a welfare check, why shouldn't you have a responsibility for at least staying in school and getting a high school degree? What can you do without a high school education anymore? And I started to LearnFair. This young lady wrote me a letter, and she said, Governor, I thought you were the worst person in the world. I got pregnant when I was 14 with my first child. I had my second child when I was 15. My grandmother was on welfare. My mother was on AFDC with me, and I'm on AFDC with my 2 children. And you started LearnFair. And I was 15 years of age, and I had to go back to school in order to get my welfare check to support myself and my children. I thought you were the worst person in the world. But I want you to know, Governor, and this was about 3 years ago, she said, I went back to school because I had to. And I'm hitting the books and I'm getting A's. And not only am I going to graduate with honors from high school, I'm going to go on to college. I'm going to graduate from college, then I'm going on to law school. And then I'm going to graduate from law school. Now you can criticize that young lady for her choice of profession. But you have to be pretty proud how she's changed her life. And that's what it's all about. And that's what is so wrong with the system. It doesn't give people the, the desire and the hope and the opportunity and optimism that each of us in this room has. The system is broken, let's fix it.
Governor, a study by Lois Quinn at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee recently revealed that 1 in 3 women sanctioned for not attending school under the Learn Fair program have been victims of domestic violence. Is domestic violence an obstacle to getting recipients off welfare, and how are you dealing with this problem?
Domestic violence is a problem in every facet of society. It's not, domestic violence is a problem of being able to have career movement. It's a problem with involved in raising children. It's involved in getting the best education for your children. It's involved in self-esteem. And what we have to do is we have to do a better job of educating, of being able to pass laws that shore up the opportunity for women to protect themselves and be protected. And we're trying all of those things in Wisconsin. But it's still a cultural thing that not so much a cultural thing, it's just the fact that it's happening in our society all over. And it's happening in every strata, every education group, and everybody in society. There's no silver bullet. All we have to do is we have to keep working, educating, and setting up the necessary resources to help women that have been battered. And it's true in AFDC, it's true in just about every program that you can imagine.
Should legal immigrants be barred from receiving welfare payments?
It goes back to the one-size-fits-all. That may be, that may be what California wants and needs. It's not what Wisconsin needs. We don't have the problem. And why should we have to be required to do something that is not a problem in Wisconsin? I would much rather be able to have a better solution. We have the second largest number of Hmong people in the country in Wisconsin. And we're setting up programs to help move them from welfare dependency into education and into work. And that's what we want to do in Wisconsin. I want to be able to help the Hmong population. I want to be able to help individuals that move into the state of Wisconsin. So, I mean, it may be okay for some states, but we should not be obligated because somebody in Washington has got a problem with one of their states. Let's let Wisconsin do what it can do the best, and that's help people.
You have challenged higher salaries for the University of Wisconsin.
Yes, I have.
Top officials, while student tuitions were being raised. Mm-hmm. What is going on there?
Yeah, boy, where is the University of Wisconsin professor that's here? I have I'm a poor guy from Elroy. And I didn't know I was poor until I left Elroy. And then somebody from Madison, when I went to university, said I was poor. So now I recognized then I was poor. And I don't think, somebody that makes over $100,000 needs a huge increase when we're raising tuition. And that was my position. It wasn't a popular position, but it's my position. I think, if you make $100,000 in Wisconsin, that's a darn good salary, and people should be able to live on that. And so I said that to the Board of Regents that they should hold down on increasing anybody that makes over $100,000 so that we could hold down on tuition. And what has happened is they didn't listen to me. That's the problem when you're governor. You appoint people to Board of Regents. Oh, they love you till you get the appointment. Then they walk out of your office. You never see them again until their appointment comes up again. So they didn't follow my direction, and so nothing has happened. But I have a budget that I'm going to introduce next week, and there's I haven't announced this yet for the press back home, but there's a surprise in there for the university professors to make over $100,000.
All right, I have a handful of political questions.
All right.
Now we'll get over here. It's the same question,
Yes.
only it's phrased in different ways. What's your reaction to folks at the National Realtors Association conference in Orlando passing out Thompson for President in 1996 buttons? It's only one part of it.
Who was there?
Well, if you don't want to be president, how about vice president? That's number 2. And number 3 is, you recently held a private meeting with your strategy people at the Madison Hotel. Please tell us what you talked about.
We talked about my budget. We talked about these university professors that make over $100,000. No, it's nice to be considered for the party's nomination. There's no question about it. It's pretty heavy stuff for somebody from Elroy, Wisconsin. But the truth of the matter is, I love ideas. I love being governor, and I think I got one of the greatest states in this nation. I think it's the greatest. I love being governor. I've got a budget that, as I've indicated, is going to try and change the property taxes in Wisconsin by reducing them by over $1 billion, and we're trying to do it without raising other taxes. And I'm more interested in getting that budget bill through and passed than I am running for president or trying to get somebody to nominate me for vice president. But it's, if I get a chance to talk about Wisconsin, you can tell I love talking about Wisconsin. I love to talk about the ideas. So if people want me to come into their individual states and talk about ideas and what's working in Wisconsin, I more than likely will do that.
Will Wisconsin, this is non-political question, we're through that part, all right. Will Wisconsin be able to continue the Hiawatha service from Milwaukee to Chicago after Amtrak discontinues its current service due to its budget woes?
You guys are tougher than the state press corps back home, I'll tell you. I was on the Amtrak board for 4.5 years. President Bush appointed me, and for some reason, President Clinton decided that he wanted a different governor, a different political persuasion. And as soon as I got on the Amtrak board, about 6 months ago, I got off, you could see what happened. They're closing routes all over this country. So I hope we are. I'm going to meet with President Tom Downs at 3:30 this afternoon, and we're hopeful that we're going to be able to maintain the Hiawatha, but it's going to be difficult. And Amtrak is in deep financial trouble, as everybody knows, and it's strange to me that the Hiawatha, which is a run between Chicago and Milwaukee, which is the second most popular route in Amtrak's inventory right now, is the one being closed down. So I don't understand that, but we are going to try and reach an agreement with Amtrak and with the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, and the city of Milwaukee to maintain it, but it's going to be difficult.
Governor, before we get to the final question, it's my pleasure to present you with a certificate of appreciation for being with us today. A coffee mug to either drink from or solicit funds with. And the final question now.
Well, before you do that, let me give you something, Bud. This is a book, Wisconsin from the Sky, and I would love very much if you would take that home tonight and read it. And it's a great book, and I would just like to say thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure this will go in our library, too. Final question. Has to do with baseball.
Yes. I'm ready.
The acting baseball commissioner is from your state?
Yes. He wants me to build him a new stadium, too.
And he wants you to build a new stadium, too? Are you going to do that? And should he and other owners be required to submit to binding arbitration to settle the strike and get the Brewers back on the field?
Well, I think we certainly all want to see him play baseball this summer, and we do have a serious problem in Milwaukee because we are going to have to build a new stadium, and we are going to build it. How we're going to pay for it has not been determined. But line item veto comes in handy. But I don't think they should be subjected to binding arbitration. Why should they? I mean, it's a private company, private clubs, and I don't think Congress has any business whatsoever of dictating a settlement. I think it should be decided. They should decide themselves. I have no reason to believe that the Congress is going to take it up, and I don't think they should.
Thank you, Governor Thompson, for being with us. We weren't too bad, were we? And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Senator Bradley tomorrow. Goodbye. Good afternoon and welcome to the National Press Club. My name is Monroe Carmen. I'm president of the club and editor-at-large at Bloomberg Business News. I'd like to welcome club guests in the audience, as well as those of you who are watching on the C-SPAN network and listening on National Public Radio and the Global Internet Computer Network. Before introducing our head table guests, I would like to remind our members of upcoming speakers. On Wednesday, February 9th, Senator Bill Bradley, Democrat from New Jersey, will present a speech entitled American Civil Society and Renewing Citizenship and Community. On Tuesday, February 14th, Henry Cisneros, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, will discuss the reorganization of his department. And on Wednesday, February 15th, Heather Whitestone, Miss America of 1995, will review her year so far as the first deaf Miss America. She will discuss the 75th anniversary of the Miss America pageant and announce a major new public service initiative to promote early detection of deafness, in a speech, welfare reform that has brought Governor Thompson the national attention. He has received so much attention, he is now mentioned on many lists of possible GOP candidates for national office in 1996. His reform initiatives are grounded in the principle of giving states flexibility to wean the poor from welfare dependency. His initiatives have included Learn Fair, which ties parents' welfare checks to their kids' school attendance, and Bride Fair, designed to remove the disincentives in the welfare system that discourage recipients from marrying and finding work. But that is only the beginning. Thompson has been working closely with Republicans in Congress on welfare reform. The GOP proposals would consolidate some 300 programs into block grants to the states. Among the programs likely to be affected are food stamps, aid to families with dependent children, and Head Start. A preview of the congressional debate was offered at the National Governors Association's recent conference. After listening to the Republican proposals, Democratic Governor Howard Dean of Vermont said the Republicans want to do no less than, quote, starve children and kick old people out of their houses, unquote. With that objective appraisal, I would present to you Governor Tommy Thompson of Wisconsin.
Thank you, Monroe. Thank you so very much, Monroe. I just have to make a couple of corrections. It's La Follette, not La Follette. And it is, Howard Dean did vote for that resolution after he made those disparaging remarks. It was omitted, but he did vote for it. I have a great feeling of admiration for Monroe Cammon, your president, because I had a chance to talk to him a little bit before. He tells me that he came in as treasurer of this tremendous organization, and it was on the verge of some degree of financial embarrassment. Bankruptcy is the word. And he used the item veto many times in order to straighten it out, so I feel that I'm in very good company, considering I've used the item veto 1,500 times in Wisconsin and have never been overridden. And Mark Johnson, I appreciate very much. I had a little bit of trepidation after I had a chance to meet with Mark. He told me he was a reporter, and he says, some of my best friends are Republicans.
Entitled, There She Is, Today's Miss America. Audio and video tapes of Press Club luncheons are available through the club library or by calling 1-800-500-9911. If you have any questions, please write them on the cards on your tables and pass them up to me. I will ask as many as time permits. I'd now like to introduce our head table guests and ask them to stand briefly when their names are called. From your right, Jeffrey Katz, Congressional Quarterly. Carol Jusitis, Chicago Tribune. Ellen Perlman, Governing Magazine. Patrick Jaspers of the Milwaukee Journal. Wendy Koch, Gannett News Service and Secretary of the National Press Club. Mark Johnson, Media General News Service and Chairman of the club's Speakers Committee. Jeff Barker of the Arizona Republic and member of the National Press Club Speakers Committee who arranged today's luncheon. Bill Salisbury, St. Paul Pioneer Press. Clarence Zenz, in his 16th year editing the National Press Club Record. Jennifer Dixon, Associated Press. And Charles Benson of WITI-TV in Milwaukee. I'd like to thank staff members Melissa Bender, Pat Nelson, Melanie Abdo-Dermott, and Jeff Tarbell for organizing today's luncheon. Our speaker today comes from a state whose leaders have a penchant for making waves. From Robert La Follette and his progressive movement to Joseph McCarthy and his pursuit of communists in government. Into that tradition steps Republican Governor Tommy Thompson, who has made headlines by advancing ideas that many Republicans in Congress now hope to enact into law. Thompson has cut the income and capital gains taxes and repealed the inheritance tax in his state. He has made ample use of Wisconsin's line item veto, which empowers the state's chief executive to trim the cost of programs. And Thompson shares another important trait with his Republican allies in Congress. After long toiling as a member of the minority in Madison, he now finds himself the state's dominant political figure. Thompson, a former Army captain, began his political career when he was elected to the State Assembly at the age of 24. He later served as minority leader. He was elected governor in 1986 and again in 1990 and again in 1994. But it has been